Hi there, everybody. I'm Wendy Margolin, and I help clinicians grow your practice with content marketing. I am live every Thursday, and I'm super excited for you guys watching live or watching afterward to hear from Sarah Gershon, who is my guest, and we are friends from LinkedIn, and we have been talking back and forth about creating your practice website. So, Sarah does therapy websites in particular, but everything we talk about, I'm sure, will apply to whatever your practice is, whatever kind of clinician you are. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear from her. Let me just introduce her first, which is always kind of awkward when you're just sitting there as a guest. So I'm going to introduce her before I bring her up here on stage. And if you're watching live or you're watching after, let us know in the comments that you are here. We're using StreamYard, so you have to give StreamYard permission to see who you are. But say hello, let us know you're here. All right, so Sarah helps therapists connect with more people and have a bigger impact on the world through beautiful websites and strategic design. And I've seen a bunch of her sites, so I can attest to that. She is owner of Strong Roots Web Design. She specializes in working with therapists because she knows they're good people doing good things, and she always feels proud of helping their visions come to life. I can totally relate because I help clinicians and feel the same way as Sarah does. She's also a busy mom of 4. And translation, she multitasks like a boss. She's a nature lover, a huge fan of the Big Bang Theory. She lives in the DC metro area with her husband, kids, and an Australian Shepherd who never listens to anything she says. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to bring Sarah on and we'll get started. All right. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here. You can hear what I say when you're in the backstage, right?
Yes, I totally
Oh,
can.
okay. I was just checking. I said only kind things from
Well, thank you. I
your fun
appreciate that.
bio. So if you guys were paying attention or you're watching after, maybe rewind and listen to that bio because it was actually set up really perfectly. We're not talking about your about me section on websites necessarily, but what you did there was introduce yourself and show that the way that you really help your target audience, which is the perfect about bio as the person who writes website content doesn't help with the actual development. So bravo.
Thanks. Thanks very
Anyway,
much.
tell us a little bit about you and how you got started specifically with web design and then decided to focus just on therapists because I'm sure you could really use that web design knowledge for any industry.
Yeah, wow. And that's a big question. I could probably talk about that for a really long time. I'll try to summarize, I guess. So I've been working with websites for a long time. It did start out for me as a side hustle. I had another job and I knew people who needed websites and I started trying to help out and found that I really, really loved it and it was super fun. And I started doing it more and more, and I started learning more and more and taking classes. And it really became something that I knew I wanted to do, full time. And so that transition took a while. And, as I'm sure many people have experienced, any kind of life transition like that takes some time and has ups and downs. But about 4 years ago, I started this business and went full time. And pretty soon after that, I realized that I really did want to kind of specialize in something very specific. And I had worked with a couple of therapists and found that, that those experiences were really positive and that I really enjoyed them. And I did market research and basically what I saw was that there are a ton of therapists who really needed my services and that there wasn't really anyone who was offering custom websites specifically in the therapy space, that there were kind of the DIY options, there were the more like templatey like options for therapists, but to really work with someone one-on-one for a custom website and have that person be someone who specializes in therapy sites, there wasn't really an equivalent person doing that. And so it felt like a really great fit. And I'm super glad that I made that choice and kind of, really focused on that area because I think there's a real need. And I found that there are a ton of people who are super interested in what I offer, which has been really great.
Yeah, I can see. Well, I know there are so many people interested in what you offer because they hear that I do marketing and they first ask me.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, when you say that, there's the DIY version and
Yeah.
then there is the the template version. Are you talking about something like these companies that just do therapy websites
Yeah.
and it's like $30 a month and they promise like your whole website? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit. Okay, obviously, we know that having a custom web designer is way better than a DIY version if you can afford it.
Right.
But talk to me about what distinguishes you from that option of doing that template
Yeah,
version.
yeah, and, I always try to be really careful when people ask me this question because I don't have any desire to denigrate any of the other options. And a lot of times, what I kind of compare it to is, over the course of my life, I lived in a dorm, I rented an apartment, I shared an apartment, right? We rented a house and then we bought a house. So there was kind of all of these gradual stages over the course of my life where eventually I got to the point where I have my own house and like we own the house, right? So I feel like sometimes it's a kind of a similar journey for therapists where they start off with one option that's maybe, more affordable and less intensive right at the beginning. And then over time, they progress to a point in their career where they're ready for, you know, to own something that's all of their own, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's a real parallel there. And so it's not denigrating kind of what I would see as like a good option for what's an earlier stage in the process, right? So the template sites are not bad. Like I think they're kind of a straightforward, easy access entry point for people. But there are definitely, there are downsides as well. When you have a custom website, first of all, it belongs to you in a way that these template sites do not. And so when people finish having a website built by me, not only is it custom built to reflect who they are and to really be a real expression of like what is unique about their practice, and the website reflects that because the website itself is unique and looks like it's built in a way that is specifically designed to like meet their needs and to express what's unique about them. But in addition, it belongs to them and they can take
Mhm.
it and, I can maintain it for them. They can maintain it themselves. They can, like it's 100% theirs. Whereas a lot of these, I mean, really all of the template options, sometimes people don't realize that that site doesn't actually belong to you. And that means that if the company changes their policies, it can have a real impact on you. If they decide they're going to start putting advertisements up at the bottom of your website and you don't like it, there's not necessarily anything you can do to stop it other than turning your website off, and all of a sudden you have nothing at all. If they decide to change their prices, if they decide to change whatever, like you're really kind of renting your space. And just like any renter, you have a real limit of control. And so I think for a lot of people, eventually having a website that's really yours is important.
Right. Okay, I really like that analogy. I also like how both of us have our dogs like alternating
I
barking
know,
in
I'm
the
so
background. So
sorry.
I really apologize to our listeners for that. They're very cute when they're not barking.
Yes, yes.
Um, and just a hot tip to anyone listening and to both of us, because we should have done this. I had someone in a meeting last week who told me that she uses an app, Crisp with a K. It's not an app, it's a plugin. I haven't looked it up yet but I have it written down and it's on my very long to-do list, which this will probably make me move it up on my to-do list. But basically, what it does is it blocks out any background sound while you are on a Zoom, a
Oh.
podcast, a StreamYard, anything like this. And she showed me she clapped right in front of my on right in front of me, like right in front of the mic while we were talking, and I couldn't hear her clap.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah. So we
That's
all need to put
great.
crisp with a K
I'm
onto.
writing it down.
Yeah, right? I
I
I
either
wrote it
need
down and
that
I
or
did
lots of
nothing with
Kong
it
Toy
besides
stuffed with
tell
peanut
all of
butter.
you.
One or the
So
other. Yeah.
maybe someone will do something good with that knowledge. Okay, dogs are all quiet for right now, so we'll continue. But I really like that analogy that you have with buying a house. And I mean, we're not going to go into your pricing right now, but I know that you could speak with Sarah if you're interested. But I do know that a lot of people who work like you are very reasonable. So I'm sure it's still within like, it's not within the McMansion pricing of houses.
Right. Well, and also I also offer the option to all of my clients to interest-free break down the cost of their website over up to 12 months.
Oh, that's
So
amazing. So
that just
yeah,
makes
that
it more
does.
accessible to people. So
Mhm.
it doesn't cost any extra. There's no difference if you pay all at once or if you pay over 12 months. It doesn't change anything. It's just you tell me what's most comfortable for you, and then we just do it that way.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so talk to me about no matter where you're doing your site, DIY with someone like Sarah or someone like one of these template companies that we're not going to name right now. What what do you recommend? Like, what do you like for people to come prepared to the table? What do you want them
Mm.
to bring?
Well, I think that's a really good question. I think the first thing to know is really to know who you serve, right? And to, if you have a niche, to really have that articulated in your head very clearly. Because the hardest websites to create are the websites that are for people who are still kind of figuring that part out. And they're like,
Mhm.
well, I really want to work with couples, but maybe it would be better if and so that kind of clarity, to have that clear in your head before you start building your website is a really important step.
Mhm.
And then also, I think it's great to come kind of with a flexible vision, meaning you should have an idea of what kind of tone you want your website to create, like what kind of overall vibe you want it to have. But within that kind of vision, you should also be flexible because what you think might be the best, most pretty website is not necessarily going to be the website that attracts clients in the most effective manner. So
Mhm.
we kind of want to find that balance between having an idea of what you think would be really attractive, but then also being able to listen to feedback about what is going to actually serve you best and help you meet your goals.
Right, absolutely. I actually a lot of times when someone comes to me very new in their practice, I will say, go if you can handle it, go with the DIY version for a little bit on like Squarespace or Wix because no matter what it looks like at the end, good or bad, even if it's beautiful, you're going to change it so much 6 months or a year into your practice where you're like, you know what, I really don't like working with teens. I thought I was willing to work with everybody, but like now my website's full of language and it's meant to look cool for teens and I really want to work with like adults with aphasia. Like that's a completely different website. So, um, okay. So talk to me about like, do you help them come up with, so like, once you know your niche, you know who you serve, do you help them come up with like the language or do you expect them to bring to you everything written? Because most developers, are very good at developing and not as good at the writing. So, um, you might be both. I'm interested to hear like what you like people to bring.
Yeah, I do the content writing
Mm,
for my clients. And I didn't originally do that because, as you said, most developers do not offer both services in one package. But what I discovered was that it was such a difficult thing for my clients to do. And when I first started off, I basically had like a template, like document that I would give to them. And I would say, okay, go through this and write out your content and give it back to me. And then literally 6 months later, they would be like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm still working on it. It's so hard." And, like, there's just so much frustration because even people who are excellent writers find the experience of trying to write their own website very difficult. And even people who are excellent writers in terms of they can write articles, they can write essays, they can write an editorial, they can all of those different forums, writing for the web is really super different. And trying to translate those abilities from one to the other can be really, really challenging and also very slow. And I just saw again and again that the projects were taking so much longer because we couldn't get the content to the point where like the client felt happy with it. And so, yeah, so now that is a service that I just wrap into the other services. And we do the content phase first and I write the content. But when I say that I write the content, I do it based on, I do an interview with the client.
mhm.
I find out as much as I can. I get any written documents that they have that might be relevant, and we make a draft and then I go over it with them and they give me feedback and we do revisions. So it's not like I'm like, here's your content, like it or not. It's a very collaborative process where the content is really like, we work really hard on getting it to be a really accurate reflection of who the practitioner is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's actually incredible. Most people don't do that. Or if
Yeah.
they do it, they'll offer it, but it's not very good. And I've seen your site, so I know that. I know that the work
Thanks.
is good. And and yeah, I one of the things that I had Michelle Griffin, or no, I was on Michelle Griffin's show last week. We were on each other. So I don't know, I think it was last week. But
Yeah.
she said something really nice that I think correlates with what you're talking about, which is that even if you're a good writer, it's really hard to frame the picture that you are in.
Oh, I
So,
love that. That's
right?
great.
It's a
It's
great
so
I've been
true.
meaning to like put that in a post, just that on its own, because
Yeah.
writing your own, and I'm sure you saw this with your own because you made your own website. Doing your own project, even when you know how to do all the technical parts, is very different than doing it for someone else. And I think what it is that if you can find somebody to bounce all your ideas off of, you will often say the thing that needs to be said. But when you're trying to get it down on paper and it's just you and your pen or you and your keyboard, it doesn't come out. You're too focused on making it sound good that you're not just having this stream of conversation. So when you talk to someone like Sarah, or I do this as well, I often help people redo their website and all their content, their about page, all that sort of thing. But we go through and I'm just like, just tell me what you do. Tell me why you love what you do. Tell me what your patients tell you, your clients tell you about how you help them. Like when you start to speak that out with a professional, with a friend, with a colleague, with a spouse, whatever, then you end up often, that person can pull those key phrases that can really make a difference on your site.
Oh, absolutely. And you're just so close to it when it's about you
Right.
and what you do. It can be really, really difficult just to step back enough to be able to create something like that. Like it's very challenging.
Yeah, agreed. So tell me about, what do you think are the most important elements on a therapy website?
That's an interesting question. I mean, honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is contact information. And I know that seems really silly, but the truth is, you'd be amazed the number of people who leave it off, who like they have a website, but they forget to put kind of like the very fundamental pieces on it, like the contact information. And when I say contact information, I mean like multiple forms, meaning there should be a contact form on your page, there should be your email address, there should be your phone number, right? So that when people are looking to actually get in touch with you, it's effortless and they can do it in the way that feels most comfortable for them. Because some
Hmm.
people just want to pick up the phone and talk to a human being, and they do not want to send any information, through a forum. They don't want to put it down in email. They are just interested in hearing a voice. And other people are going to be the opposite and are going to feel shy. And the idea of talking to a person is going to feel intimidating. And they want to be able to just send you an email or fill out a contact form. So having just that, already you're making a really good decision and you're way ahead of the rest, right? If you just have all that contact information, make it super easy to find, put it in multiple places, and have all the options available to people so that when they want to reach out to you, they can do it really without having to stop and think about it. That's one of the
Right.
most important things.
That, and having that, once you've got it there, having it very easy to find, like you're
Yes,
saying, in multiple
absolutely.
places, like button on the top right.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then one of the most visited pages on websites is always the about page, which I think is something people don't necessarily realize because I think a lot of therapists are very focused on their client, which is great. But when the client comes to the website, what they're trying to figure out is who you are and if they feel comfortable with you. And so a lot of people go straight to the about page and they're looking for a picture and they're looking for a sense of who you are, not just like a resume, but really almost to feel like they've had a little bit of a conversation with you and they know what talking with you would feel like. And so it's important to also have the credentials, have your degree, have all of that stuff on there. But you can't just have that. You have to also have the more personal part, the more conversational part, where people feel like they're getting a sense of getting to know you.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. I always talk to clinicians who are, especially the physicians I work with, they'll be very focused on where they attended med school and residency and if they did a fellowship, and they're naming all of these very prestigious things that they rightfully should feel extremely proud of. But unless your audience is your colleagues, which it might be, if you're trying to be a thought leader among your colleagues, so then that is going to be really important. But to your clients or your patients, they don't really care when you went to, where you went for whatever fellowship or grad school. They don't even typically care so much about all the letters after your name, because those are confusing. There's so many for a therapist. So it's like trying to figure out which one is which. There are so many acronyms. You have to like be a real insider to know all those things. So just being that person that's really open and looks like someone who you want to talk to. I think that's a great advice for the about page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say are some like big mistakes that you see people, besides not having an obvious way to contact you? What would be another like big mistake on a website?
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I would say that the biggest mistake that I see is people who get confused about the website in terms of thinking about the website in terms of saying this is an expression of who I am. And so it
Mm,
becomes overly personal. They become overly invested in it, and it becomes super, super emotional, right? And I think that you have to think of the website as a communication tool where you are using it as a way to start a conversation with people. And so, just like you're not going to walk up to somebody in the supermarket and be like, hey, and then like, let me express the truest part of who I am to you right now, right? Right. So your website can express who you are in many ways, but ultimately it's a tool for starting conversations with potential clients. And so there may be parts of it that you have to think about from a more practical perspective and less from like an artistic or emotional perspective, because there's a difference between something being really beautiful and something being an effective marketing tool. And a website, when it's done right, is a marketing tool. Like you're creating it because you want to get clients or because you want the right clients to be able to find you. And so that kind of has to stay paramount in your mind. And if you start to really think of the website as a forum for your own artistic expression, the website will ultimately suffer, right? Like there has to be the, again, it's all about balance, like the balance between like, yes, you should have your website reflect your personality and reflect who you are, because what you do as a therapist involves sitting down with people and your personality is a big part of that. But then the other part of it is the website is a tool, and in order for it to be effective, it has to be built in a certain way, it has to function in a certain way. And so again, it's kind of about that distance and about understanding what a website's like purpose is.
right. 100%. And I've seen this before where a client will come to me with a website that they've spent thousands of dollars, especially sometimes some of these bigger companies that have multiple facilities. So they had the budget and they spent thousands of dollars, and the website is stunning, but they might as well frame it and put it on the wall or put it in a book to be a coffee table book, because it's very beautiful, but you can't even tell what they do. Like it's not
Right.
clear what they do. It's not clear um, what are the steps that the viewer needs to take when they get to the site. It's not clear how you can help. And so that clarity of like of what to say and the journey you want the viewer to take in order to for you to be able to help them is much more important than making it beautiful.
Right, 100%.
And I love aesthetics, but
Right, I do too. But you also have to keep in mind that people aren't coming to your website to have kind of like an artistic experience.
right.
They're coming to your website because they have a problem and they
Hmm.
want to figure out if you're the right person to help them fix it. And
Right.
so the goal of the website should be to communicate to them efficiently, because they have other things going on and they have a lot of distractions. They have a lot of problems, right? And so you want to get your message across to them in a very succinct and powerful way, and not expect that they're going to spend an hour poring over every word and reading all of the,
Yeah.
like all of this stuff. You have to make it easy for them to understand how you can help them.
Right. I would say that you don't even have 2 minutes. Like, you really
Oh,
have to you have about 2 seconds for a person to judge if they're willing to spend 2 minutes.
right, and if
And
the
that's
website is
about it.
overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? If the
Yeah.
website feels overwhelming, then you're gonna lose them right off the bat.
Right. Or not clear. So that I would say that after that contact button, the next most important thing would be a little bit what you mentioned is being very clear on who you serve and how you help them solve their problem and right why you're the right person. So that one liner that's at the very top of the fold, before anyone has to scroll down, like that is essential. And then an image that shows, that's going to resonate with that audience. So yeah, can we just spend the last couple minutes talking about SEO? Because I think people get really overwhelmed. And my understanding, and I'm sure you know more, but my take on SEO and what I recommend to my clients is that there's two parts to it. There's the one part is this back end, very technical piece, making sure that there's no like roadblocks, stop signs, wrong way signs, like in your website in that back end, like making sure it loads quickly, making sure that there aren't any broken links. And so all those sort of things that are much more technical. And then there's the second piece of creating content with the keywords, with local SEO. So your location and the keywords of what you do. So can you talk a little bit about what people need to know when they're like, do I need SEO? Do I not? And how do I get that done?
Right. It's a super great question. And SEO is one of those topics where it can it is complex, and you can go down the rabbit hole and get completely overwhelmed with all of the details and the technical aspects. But then there's also a lot that you can access without getting into all of that complexity, that you can use that can benefit you without having to feel like you have to become an expert or delve into a lot of stuff that's extremely hard to understand. So I think that the way that you're talking about it is really good. There's the back end part, which is, definitely more technical. And then there's the content marketing part, which I think is in a lot of ways the most powerful part, but you also have to approach it with strategy. If you think that content marketing is going to work if you just sit down and every week write a blog about the flowers growing outside and how lovely it is, and some kind of like very abstract post about something that you've been thinking about recently, right? That's not going to help you, because it's not going to have keywords in it. It's not going to help people find your website. So if you're going to create content, you have to have a strategy where you're looking and doing research to figure out what are the things that people are searching for, and then you're creating content that's going to invite those people to come to your website. So you kind of have to engage in the content creation in a targeted and thoughtful way. And that's totally doable, but simply creating content isn't enough. You have to kind of also have the strategy part of it. And then as far as local SEO, I think, if you are a therapist who works, within a geographic area, and a lot of this has changed recently because now so many people are doing things over Zoom. And so I'm talking to people who are like, well, I used to work just in Florida, but now I can work in Florida or Georgia, or like, and there's like a whole big list. So that's a little bit different. That's actually a little bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
But if you work in a specific geographic area, I'd say, first of all, yes, 100% have those words on your website. talk about it, have the content on your website. But then another tool that you should be looking into using is your Google My Business listing, because a lot of people don't realize how powerful the Google My Business listing is. And the difference between traditional SEO, which I 100% think is worth doing, but the difference between that and Google My Business is that regular SEO is a long-term strategy that takes a lot of patience, because even if you're doing the right things, you got to do them consistently over a long period of time, and you have to keep doing it while you wait for the results. And if you stop doing it after 2 months because you're not getting results, then you're missing out, because you're not going to start seeing results for 4 months anyway, and you got to just keep doing it. But Google My Business, you can go onto it today, you can create your listing, you can optimize your listing, you can do all this stuff, and then you can start increasing your rankings locally within 24 hours, which is kind of phenomenally powerful. So if you're a candidate for that, like if that fits your business model, it's a great tool that you should definitely be using.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great tip. So definitely, if you are local and you haven't claimed your Google business page, just Google the name of your business, and then you should come up and it'll say there's a button to press, claim this business. Is this business yours? It says some language like that. It's actually really easy. It only gets complicated when you're someone like me and you're trying to claim a business on behalf of someone else, and then you're dealing with this whole postcard deal. But even then, it's not so hard. It's not nearly as hard as some of these other back end. I would also say check out Bright Local. That is a way to get similar listings. Google Business is the most important, but for local SEO, Bright Local, I think it's $2 a listing, and you can choose which ones you're doing. And then it'll do that similar work of making sure that your business name, address, and phone number are consistent on like Apple Maps and a bunch of like local listings. So those kinds of things, and directories, all that really can help your SEO. So those are some great tips. So Sarah, you've been so helpful. Can you tell us where to find you?
Sure. My business is Strong Roots Web Design. So people can go to my website, and I actually have a free video course on my website that people can sign up for, which is the Secrets to a Successful Therapist website. So some people might want to check that out. I'm also super active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is definitely where you can stop by and say hi, and I'll be there probably more than I ought to be.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and I appreciate meeting you in person. And for everyone listening later or watching, so have a great rest of your week. And I will put any of the links we talked about in the show notes.
Thank you so much.
Sure. See everyone next week.